3, 2, 1.
Good morning, everybody. So this morning we're going to talk about what to expect on your first visit to a new therapist office. My name is Chris, and you're watching Therapy with a Video Gamer. Okay, so the very first meeting you're going to have with your potential new therapist is called the intake. So what the intake is all about is just the therapist asking you 1,000,001 questions about your life. They're going to include a lot of different things like family of origin. They're going to include things about your medical history, potentially any like substance abuse or mental health issues that you might have had. They're going to talk about maybe minor things like legal history or any kind of employment issues if we need to think about like case management or something like that. But typically it's called a biopsychosocial assessment. They want to try to get as broad of a picture as possible. The intake just doesn't allow for the time you would need to have that sort of in-depth reflection that you would probably come to expect in most therapy sessions, and you will have in most therapy sessions going forward. But for the intake, it's really all about data collection. It's about getting as much information in a small span of time, relatively speaking, so that we can move forward with the best possible plan that we can put out just from what we get from the first time. Okay, so I think that pretty much covers what the general flow of what an assessment or intake is supposed to be for your first meeting. I want to say one more thing about the first meeting, and then we'll move on to something more specific about the intake process. Making time for crisis management on the first visit is very important, because if you come into my office, for example, and you tell me all these things that are happening and they're time sensitive and you need answers for them quickly or you need them now, then it's really not going to do either of us much good for our relationship going forward, or just for treatment in general if I'm too concerned about, well, what about, that time 3 years ago when you did this, this, and this, and it contributed to this thing, and then this happened. It's not relevant unless I can get you in the headspace to where you feel like it's safe to talk about those things, because now we've worked through the immediate issues that need to be handled right now. I think the most important thing that a therapist does on their very first session with a potential new client is they take it upon themselves, because it is their responsibility, to really cultivate that therapeutic alliance between themselves and their potential new client, because that therapeutic alliance is pretty much the only thing that matters being real in therapy. All the training and letters next to your name and money that you spend at these fancy trainings and all that stuff doesn't mean anything if the person in front of you doesn't trust you. So this is why I think it is such a hugely important part that you feel comfortable with your therapist and that you feel like they understand you and that they're willing to work with you and meet you where you are. Because if you don't have any of those things in place, if you don't really feel that way, then there's not a very high chance of success in terms of treatment, because you don't trust them with the big things, because you can't even get behind them on the small things from the very beginning. Okay, so let's also talk about a few things to keep in mind just for a smooth first session with your new potential therapist. One good idea is to have an idea of what you are coming in for and be able to, maybe even come up with a script, come up with some kind of narrative in your head that really accurately describes the problem and what you want to do about it, or what you see can be done about it, what you would like to happen. All of those are really good things to have in mind when you're coming in for the first time, because while therapists are very good interviewers and they are trained to ask the right questions, we are not mind readers, so our job is much, much easier when we have someone who can and who is willing to be as open and honest as possible, because then we get the fullest picture we can possibly get for any treatment plans or anything that we decide to do going forward. Another really important thing that I don't know if a lot of people are aware of is you should absolutely be asking your own questions and coming into therapy for the first time intake with your own questions. It is your responsibility to take charge of your own treatment by being as informed as you possibly can and asking the questions to get the information that you need to be informed. And more often than not, I do notice that clients who are able or who are more willing to open up in the first time they meet with somebody and they're just completely honest, they don't try to hold anything back, they usually are able to make progress a little bit more quickly, and they are usually much more invested in the process because they are giving it 100%. They're not just giving it what they feel like is safe or what they feel like is not going to be harmful to them, because they realize that part of what they're doing in the first place is trying to step out of their comfort zone and grow, which is where growth happens, is outside your comfort zone. So try to come in with an open mind and to be as honest as you can possibly muster, because it will be so helpful for your new therapist and for yourself ultimately. Okay, so now the day of the appointment has come, and you want to make sure that you have everything either that you need to send ahead of time or that you need to bring with you on the day of the appointment. It just depends on your provider as far as what's going to be in their individual intake packet and when they're going to want you to turn it in. I know with the pandemic and everything, a lot of people have switched to just strictly electronic methods. Like that's pretty much what I do, is just have all my packets go through DocuSign so that it's secure, it's online, you don't have to have any contact. And it really helps, especially if people 100% just want to do teletherapy, which is understandable for the moment. Whatever the case is, if you have insurance, you'll probably want to bring a copy of your policy card as well as your state ID, and they'll want to make a copy of those, and you'll either fill out paperwork in the lobby or they'll ask you to fill it out ahead of time, like I said. It's just going to vary from provider to provider. Did you like what you just saw? Make sure you like and subscribe. New videos come out every Tuesday.